Hey, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. This is the third installment of our how-to series. So previously in these how-to series, we've covered whether you should use AI as a recruiter. Mike Bradshaw took you through that. In episode 2, we covered what is an MCP server and how do you use it. Dave Edwards took you through it. My name is Paul, and I will be taking you through how to go from hundreds of applicants to a short list in just a few minutes using AI and a couple of other features within the Pinpoint platform. So as you know, AI tools are helping candidates apply to hundreds of jobs at once. So if you're having issues around volume, that problem is getting worse, not better. You can't screen harder. You have to kind of screen smarter. So today we're going to show you how to go from 300-ish applicants to a confident shortlist in just minutes without losing your judgment along the way. A little bit of housekeeping. If you have questions, go ahead and drop that in the chat as we go along. We'll get to those at the end as long as we have time to do that. So drop your questions in the chat. If we don't get to it, don't worry, someone will follow up. So let's talk a little bit about what screening looks like today, and then I'll share my screen and we'll kind of jump into the platform itself. You know, today when you get a job, and actually let me go ahead and share real quickly. You might have a job with 300 applications, and you kind of first have to scan for red flags. You have to try to remember who stood out. You have to kind of do some math in your head around how many applicants is it going to take for me to get the hire that I'm looking for. Those are all tough things that kind of all happen in your head, and things kind of go off the rails as volume spikes, as you're probably seeing in the marketplace today. So we're talking about things like consistency. If I have 300 candidates and I got to review all those by hand, does the 293rd candidate get the same criteria as the 7th? Probably not. You're human. You're tired. You've gone through a whole bunch of them. That just doesn't scale. Speed. So if I got to go through 290, 300 applications one by one, I'm going to miss out necessarily on the window for people to get interviewed. So think about, everybody wants to move quickly through the hiring process. If it takes me a really long time to review candidates, they probably applied for other jobs that they're already interviewing for and have kind of missed my opportunity there. And then also defensibility doesn't scale either. So you have no audit trail necessarily on why someone was rejected because you got to the 160th applicant and you just kind of dismissed the other 140 and didn't take time to make notes on that. So all of those things really kind of fail to scale over time for a job that has 300 plus applications, right? And of course, you also have a little bit of a fake resume problem. I'm hearing that more and more from the marketplace. So AI tools mean candidates can generate really polished resumes and applications in just a few seconds. And so it still requires sort of a manual review, and you still do need to get kind of hands-on. So, the goal here and everything that we're talking through today isn't necessarily to remove the recruiter. So don't worry about that. You still got a role. It's just to get the recruiter to those 5 or 10 applications that are worth their looking at and applying judgment instead of the 300 candidates that we just won't have the time to look at properly. So judgment still matters, right? We still want to review these applicants, looking for culture signals, career trajectory, edge cases that don't fit the pattern. I will tell everyone until I'm blue in the face that I like to hire non-traditional candidates. I like people who can just figure things out rather than resumes. And that's where your judgment really kicks in, right? So where AI and automation and the things that I'm going to walk you through today do the legwork is applying a really consistent criteria, surfacing the strongest fits, and flagging you on the few individuals that are worth looking at. So kind of 2 layers working together here: rules-based automation for the stuff that should work the same every time, and then AI for some of the stuff that requires some judgment, interpretation, those kind of things. So let's go ahead and dive in and get started. So here's the problem, right? I'm looking at this customer service representative job, and I've got 300 candidates. I opened it up on Friday. I come in on Monday, and holy cow, I'm depressed. My entire Monday has gotten destroyed because now I've got to go look at 300 candidates, but not necessarily, right? So let's walk through how Pinpoint can help there. I'm going to go ahead and flip to another tab, and I'm going to start with showing you a little bit about our Copilot up here on the right-hand side. So the first thing that I want to do when I open up any job is figure out how many applicants it's going to take for me to make a hire. I want to cap it there, right? There's no worse experience as an applicant applying to a job and not necessarily ever hearing back. And there's no worse experience as a recruiter from having an endless amount of applicants that just keep coming. So I think the first thing that you need to determine is how many applicants does it generally take me to make a hire for a specific role, and then cap the applications at that point. How do I do that? So I'm going to show you that. If you look at Copilot up here on the top right in Pinpoint, we'll talk about that in just a minute. If you haven't had a chance to review Copilot, we'll have an option for you to do that in just a second. But I'm going to flip over to this tab and kind of walk you through the first step that I take. So I have asked Copilot here to create me a custom insights widget that shows my total applicants and my total hires. Now, I'm going to do a little math here, but I'm going to put some science behind it. So Copilot has asked me a couple of quick questions, and you can see it's responded over here on the right-hand side. And I've gone ahead and created my own application and hiring overview widget, which now exists in my Insights Hub. Very cool. Copilot can do this for you. Let's go ahead and click into that. And I'm going to see really quickly that in general, it takes me 300 applications to make 2 hires. I can do that math. It's about 160. Now, 160 applicants per hire, that sounds good to me. I think I need to round up a little bit just to make sure that I can kind of have overages, any outliers. If this is an outlier type job, I want to have a little bit of extra there. From there, it all kind of makes sense. So 318 applications, that's roughly a 160 to 1. But anyway, Copilot has done this all for me. It's made it very easy. I now know how many applications that I need to make a hire. So if you were looking at this earlier and you thought, hey, Copilot is super cool, how do I get involved there? I'll show you this really quickly. There's a lot of different things Copilot can do. We will be talking through this extensively over the course of the next month. But hey, it's an everyone's subscription. You should be using it now. So let's talk about what I do now that I know I need 300 applications roughly to actually make a hire. I'm going to flip over to this screen and show you that I've gone ahead and set up an automation that will automatically close this job when I hit 300 applicants. So I'm going to click into this really quickly, and you can see this is built today, that when a job is created, I open it up. Once I hit 300 applications, I'm going to close it. And that's going to happen at any time, any day during the week. So I know 300 is the cap. I don't need 307. I don't need 800. 300 is my number. Now, this is not hard and fast, right? Like I could always reopen this if I need to, but I'm going to cap it at 300. This allows me to not cut corners. I've got plenty of applicants and the data says that I have enough to make a hire. I can always open that up later. So this automation has made it easy. I don't have a bad experience if I'm someone who applies late in the game and I never get considered, and you have a little bit less to kind of pull through. So I've set my cap. Now I know I'm going to stop at 300. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set an automation to filter out non-negotiables. So if I go back to the job with 300 applicants, I want to go ahead and start screening these people immediately. I'm going to flip over here really quickly and show you I have gone from 300 down to 281 already rejected without me ever reviewing it. Now, how did I do it? I did that through an automation, which I'll show you right now. So you might know these a little bit as knockout questions. I'm going to call them maybe non-negotiables, nice to haves, all that kind of stuff. And then I've taken this automation a little bit further. So let's start with sort of this first step, which is non-starters. So I asked in this customer service example, I asked everyone some straightforward questions. So do you live within 30 miles of Chicago? Are you legally authorized to work in the United States? Are you over 18? These aren't preferences. These are requirements for the role, and you can't function in this role without it. So it makes sense to filter on these before we do anything else. So I've set this up so that if they answer no to any of these questions, or maybe they have less than 3 years of experience, which is just a non-starter for me, I'm going to reject them and send them a rejection email a day later. Nobody likes to get that email rejection like seconds after they applied. So we have kind of a nice compensation for this where you can wait a day before you send it out. But we're going to do that. And then we're also going to tag those folks as underqualified, because what could happen is I open another CSR role next week and those people are applying again and I've got to go back through it. It's just nice to go ahead and tag them as underqualified so they exist in my system with that, right? So those were my non-negotiables. You can't work here. You can't do this job without these. I would be careful with these, right? The more of these you ask, the more apt people are to kind of leave the process. But if there are clear things that are not preferences, they're requirements, go ahead and list them and just remove those people if they are answering no to those things, because they simply can't work in that role if that's the case. But I've taken this automation a little bit further. So I want to do a couple of different things from here. So as you saw in sort of the initial screening, I was asking them about their experience level, and I gave them a multi-select dropdown so they could say less than 3 years, 3 to 5, and then 5+. The less than 3 years I put as a non-negotiable. I'm going to reject those. For people who are kind of in the middle with 3 to 5 years of experience, all right, so those are not good fits. I need 5 years plus. But guess what? I'm probably going to hire for this CSR role again at some point. So I'm going to go ahead and reject those folks here. And we're also going to add a tag called inexperienced. So not underqualified. They're on their way. They're just a bit inexperienced. And I'm going to add them to a talent pipeline that I've set up called CSR so that in the future, if this role opens, I can go ahead and invite them to apply for the job and start sourcing automatically because I already know them. They have all of my non-negotiables. They just aren't quite experienced enough. So probably a really good candidate next time around on this role. So I'm going to add them to my talent pipeline for later, but still reject them. And maybe I want that email to look a little bit different. Like, hey, we really appreciate your qualifications. You're just a little inexperienced. We'll be in touch if a role ever comes up that's a great fit for you. That's a cool candidate experience, especially if I get emailed like a year from now and they remembered me. Really cool and a nice way to use Pinpoint. And then the third piece that I'm going to do is for those with 5+ years of experience, I'm actually going to go ahead and put them in a review stage. So now I've kind of filtered through my non-negotiables. I've said what my ideal person is right here, right? And I'm going to go ahead and move them automatically to the review stage and sort of create a nice little pile of folks that I can start with right away. So everything that I just walked through, the non-negotiable filtering right here, the applicant volume cap, the pipeline routing, the experience piece, that all runs on Pinpoint's automation suite, saves a ton of time. And I'm going to show you that right now as we flip over to our applicants. So we set the cap at 300, 300 came in, 281 of those did not get through my requirements and then my really strong preferences. So what that means is you saw that automation, it's gone ahead and moved 19 candidates who have all the non-negotiables and have 5 years of experience right here into this initial review stage, which is a really great place to get started. So now I went from 300 and I've only got 19. So we're back in this job. All of these people claim they have 5 years plus of experience. They meet every legal requirement I have. But the key part is, and I think a lot of you feel this pain, is that all of these people claim 5+ years of experience. Those application questions are self-reported. I can say whatever I want in an application, right? People don't always answer that accurately. Let's put it that way. I don't necessarily think they mean wrong. I believe in the good of people, but it may not be out of dishonesty. Sometimes it's just optimism. Sometimes you're stretching 3 years and maybe you consider those in dog years or whatever, and you actually have more than 5 years. Either way, it doesn't really matter. I want to verify that before I spend any real time on them. So this took me 0 time, right, to get to these 19. And now I'm going to go one step further to validate that they actually have those 5 years. So how am I going to do that? Pretty easy. I'm going to use this AI fields option over here. So in Pinpoint, you can click this AI field and you can do kind of a single question. We call this criteria checklist. I've already set one up called experienced, and I'll show you how that works here in just a second. But when you have this all set up, we'll walk you through it and you can select what you want to review. So in this case, your options are application answers or resume. Now they already did their application answers. So what I'm really trying to filter on is, does their resume match their application answers? And so I'm only going to check the resumes and I'm going to ask a simple yes or no question. Does this person have at least 5 years of experience in customer service based on their resume? So now I know their application and I'm double checking on a resume. I'm hitting save. I'm hitting save fields there. And then once I do that, this will pop up over here where it has gone ahead and reviewed those resumes and said whether or not they have 5 years plus of experience, right? So I get a simple yes or no for each of these candidates. What I'll do next, obviously that took me just about a half a minute to do, is I can filter this or sort this, by who said yes, who said no. And now I'm down to about 7 candidates, right? So I'm down to only 7 candidates. And these are the folks that now I need to kind of spend some time reviewing. So that AI fields has allowed me to go ahead and validate that what they said is true in their resume. And now I can start to review these candidates a little bit more. And this is where your judgment starts to kick in. So all of these things, we're applying really consistent criteria across the board. But now your judgment really kicks in because I've got 7 people. I probably don't want to interview all 7. That's a lot of time on my calendar, but I can go through that short list really quickly and figure out who I want to review, who I actually want to interview. Easiest way to do that would be to set up a viewing queue. I know a lot of you know how to do this, but I often find customers don't know how to do this, and it saves them a ton of time and they like the experience. So you can go ahead and come on here and let's go ahead and click these 7 folks who we know are on our short list. And I can click this queue button in Pinpoint, and it will create a viewing queue of those 7 candidates. You can see this pop up. I'm going to move the hiring Copilot here for just a moment. And you can start to review these folks. I like to do sort of a double pane here. So you'll see a couple of options over here, the stacked view and the split view. I like the split view because I can pull up their application side by side with their resume. And this is my manual review process, right? Like I have 7 really good candidates. I want to get to 3 or 4. So I'm going to go through these individually and I'm going to star them. So maybe Jose is a 4. I've reviewed him. And now I'm going to skip over here to Roger. Roger is a 2. I actually found in his resume that he changes jobs every 6 months and like just not a great fit for us. I can go through these and make up a bunch of scenarios, but you know this situation. Now I'm going through 7 instead of 300. So I've saved just a ton of time. And now I'm on to maybe my short list of just 3 or 4. So I'm going to come back here into the initial review stage. I'm going to go ahead and see that AI field here. We've got that, and we've also got their star rankings. So I can figure out, okay, I want to move Jose and Jason on to the final or to the first interview stage. And I've gotten down to my short list. Now, what am I going to do to kind of wrap this up with a little bit of bonus on top? What you can do is go back into the hiring Copilot. I'll flip screens here and show this to you. And you can write 5 really great interview questions for each of these candidates. If you're not using this part of hiring Copilot, I really, really love it. The reason that this matters, generic interview questions get generic answers. They just do. And so by grounding that question in both the job description and the specific candidate's background, so maybe their resume, I'm asking things that actually test the fit for this role, not just for me, but also for the candidate themselves. So I know that many of you using scorecards continue to do that, but it's also nice to kind of throw in a couple really tailored interview questions. So what the Copilot has done here is it's looked through Jason's resume, it's looked at the job description, and it's kind of called out a few areas that we want to be a little bit more specific on. Obviously, you can tailor these prompts to be however you want, but what this really probes at is sort of, is this person a great fit for us? Do they match the job description? Will they be happy in their role? All of those kinds of things. So from there, I've taken my 3 or 4 folks, I've gone ahead and gotten them ready for an interview process. And really the only amount of time that I spent on this whole process was kind of that individual review stage. That was kind of the only part because my judgment matters and I still want to review that short list of candidates. So let's recap what just happened. So every step mattered, and I'm going to walk you through a little bit of why. So I started with a real number, 300. It takes me roughly 300 applications to make a hire. It was not a guess. I know 300 is the magic number for me. Automations enforced that number and filtered out non-negotiables and underexperienced candidates before I ever looked at them, while still preserving those good but early candidates in a pipeline. So let me stop sharing this for just a second. 1 second here. Great. So it took me through those non-negotiables. I still preserved good but early candidates for a pipeline later. And an AI field caught the gap between what people claimed and what their resume actually supports. So we kind of had a trust but verify exercise. Finally, I did a manual review queue, which will let me apply judgment only where it was actually needed. So I didn't need to put any brain power into those 300. I really only needed to put brain power into those 7. And then the Copilot generated interview questions tailored to the job and the person, not a generic template. So I've got 7 folks. I know exactly what I want to talk to them. So we went from 300 applicants to 7 really well qualified. Maybe I got down to 3 or 4 once I did that final review process. and I have a clear and defensible reason behind every single rejection that I did. So they didn't meet certain criteria. I've also got a talent pipeline for the future, and almost none of it required me to manually read through hundreds of applications. I only needed to review 7. It took me 5 minutes, and now I've got my 3 or 4 folks that are ready for my hiring manager to maybe talk to. So let's close this out with 3 things that I recommend that you try this week. So first, find and set your applicant cap. Go ahead and open up Hiring Copilot when you can. Ask it to pull your applicant-to-hire ratio from a recent role. Once you have that number, set up a simple automation so the job closes itself when it hits that number. That one step takes the guesswork out before applications even start coming in. Second, make sure you review your knockout questions. Think about those as the non-negotiables, the must-haves. Go into your most active job and ask yourself, are there requirements that I'm still manually checking and expending a lot of time and brain power on that the system could just handle for me? Find one and automate that. That's how you start narrowing down before you've opened up a single application. And third, try an AI field. You saw that. Create a criteria checklist on your next role and let it sense check whether the experienced candidates mentioned in their application actually shows up on the resume. It's a quick check that can take your review pile from 19 people that we thought met all the criteria down to 7 that actually do, without you even reading a single one. So those 12 can go on the other pile. We can reject those folks and apply the tags accordingly. Those are really small steps, but if you do all 3 of those things, so review your knockout questions, set an applicant cap, and try out an AI field, you'll really start to feel the difference by the end of the next week. Thank you, everybody, for attending. We appreciate everybody taking the time, and reach out to us if you have any questions. We'll see everybody next time.